just on the phone, and then just make sure that. Are you on an iPhone there, Espen?
It's a Google Pixel, my man.
Okay, whatever that is. So, man, thanks, Espen. Have a good one, buddy. Have a good evening.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks
Much
for your
love,
time, man.
boys.
Take care, my man.
For sure,
See you, buddy.
thank you.
See you, bud.
Bye.
Bye.
Yo, my man.
How's it, buddy? Woohoo! That was awesome.
How's it going?
That was really cool.
How's
man.
it going?
Yeah, good, and you?
Nicely done.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, record. So before we actually get to the guest of the day, we just like to have a little discussion about some of the aspects of the chat that we had that we thought were really or particularly interesting. And this week, Dr. Espen was a really interesting guy, and we had a great chat with him. He touched on lots of different kinds of ideas in health, and we chatted a lot about mindset. But I totally understand, like, this guy had been through a lot in his life, hey, Gareth? And, I think the only way you can overcome so much is to actually just have a really focused mindset. And I think he's really achieved that. And that's something he understands intrinsically, and that's why he teaches it a lot. So, I don't know, what were your thoughts on his mindset?
Yeah, I think it's always important when you listen to somebody, you need to sort of put yourself in their shoes and understand where they have come from. And when you listen to Dr. Espen's childhood and his upbringing, you can really see why a positive mindset and belief system is integral to the way he got out of the situation he was in. And and I think it's very, very powerful, and there's something in there which each of us should definitely consider, like how powerful by literally making a decision in your mind, you can go one way or the other, and that can really impact on your outlook in life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, so you almost like you get to choose the sort of state that you want to be in every day, and it needs to be a conscious decision. It doesn't just sort of happen. And I think, that's definitely what I took from that as well. And we also discussed. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I was just gonna say, like, everything literally is a choice, so like happiness is a choice. You can wake up today and you can go to work grumpy, or you can wake up today and you can go to work happy, and that is a pure choice, and it's literally the same amount of energy, and it's just completely up to you. And that's, I guess, where the sort of essence of belief and mindset comes in this chat.
Yeah, totally, man. That's so true. And I think mindset plays a big role in and of itself, but mindset and the state of mind also plays a big role in something that Espen does a lot, and that's yoga, and he's really passionate about yoga. And I think a large proportion of of society reckons that yoga is just about how flexible or how much you can, how far can you bend, or how can you touch your toes. But I think it's quite different to that, and there's also different kinds of yoga. And I know, Gareth, you're quite into your yoga. How important is it for guys to do yoga? And is it important for us to be doing some kind of yoga? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I personally am a big fan of yoga. I think I definitely know there's so much more to it than literally just bending over and touching your toes. Yoga for men in particular, I think is really, really important. Especially once you get to a certain age, our bodies actually need to get more flexible, and our muscles need that lengthening. But yoga is so much more than that. It's mainly around, I would say, your mindset, and your breathing and what your focus is. So, the actual practice allows you to sort of, go deeper into your body and into your mind, and helps break down, I guess, things that you built over time, especially your ego. It's such a humbling form of exercise, but it's also very powerful in terms of it's almost like a active meditation. And after you finish each class, it's generally been a challenge for various different reasons, but you also feel very calm and collected after it. What are your thoughts on it, Craig?
I feel very much the same. I practice a bit of yoga when I get a chance, but not nearly as regularly or as you do, for example, or as passionately as you do. I've just felt the same thing, and I've learned from the people around me that do a lot of yoga is that it's exactly like you said, an active meditation. Where are your boundaries? How do you approach that boundary, and then sit with that feeling of being uncomfortable, and then finding the mental strength to keep going through that. And that's something I think that yoga does really, really well. I presume there's other ways to do that, but I think yoga has really perfected that aspect of that mental and physical stamina. And I think what a good combo, why not do two things at once?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
So, I think that's a good point to take us to the moment where we get to actually have a listen to Dr. Espen and hear what makes him ridiculously human. We're back.
Don't forget to start recording on the phone, eh? And Audacity, bud.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah,
we are
back.
on
Okay.
for recording.
Woo! All right. So what we'll do is I'll count us in, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, record, and then we just push record at the same time. It's just a bit easier for the editing if we do it that way. So
No problem.
Are you ready, Chana?
I'm ready, my man.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, record.
Okay.
Sorted. Alrighty, all right. So here we are, Dr. Espen. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Pleasure's all mine, gentlemen. Good to see you and speak to you.
How's your day been?
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. It's good. I mean, we just had a quick conversation earlier about, the magnificence of living on the beautiful Gold Coast. And I think sometimes a lot of us forget how many things we have to be grateful for. So I'd like to remind myself of the beautiful place that I have to live, and how beautiful my day was. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, indeed.
Sure,
but I saw you with your green juice and your mates on the beach today, and here I am in London, shivering and really jealous. So, like Craig said, thanks for joining. I just wanted to find out one thing from you quickly, and ask you something. Hurvan har du da?
Veldig bra. Hvordan har du det?
Woo!
Good job.
I was just wondering if you'd forgotten, bud, because you got the Aussie accent going, and I was just hoping you could still speak Norwegian,
Bloody oath, mate. It's good. I mean, for those of you out there who don't know what he said, "How are you today?" And I basically responded and said, "Nothing short of excellent. Thank you very much. How are you?"
Awesome.
Beautiful. So just for a little bit of context, Espen, the first time I met Espen, I was new on the Gold Coast and didn't really know anybody, and a mutual friend sort of took us, I went with a mutual friend of ours, and we went to have a kombucha somewhere, and he said, "Oh, there's Espen over there, and it's a friend of mine." And yeah, you were just jamming in this with this great music, that live band that was playing, and I just remember thinking, this guy's got loads of character. You were just loving the music and having a great time, and you made me feel really welcome. And I think the time that we've got to know each other. I think that's just very much your like personality. So that was something that really resonated me, and I remember when we first met. So thanks for that. So just to kick off today as well, I wanted to ask you, what was childhood Espen's, what is it like growing up in a fairy tale land of I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but Arendelle.
Very good, Arendelle, indeed. Yeah, for those who don't know what that is, literally the movie Frozen was based on my hometown in Norway, very, very south of Norway, a tiny little town of 20,000 people. And I guess it is a little bit like it sounds like. It's a bit of a, it's not necessarily this old Viking village, but it is, you can clearly see that it's an old fisherman shipping kind of village. I'd say it's cold. It's, cold in context and comparison to what, but it does get pretty fresh. We have all 4 seasons, and it is very different to Australia, and I would even imagine so South Africa. But it was beautiful, a safe place to grow up, magnificent people, and it really, when you reflect on it now, is really interesting because everywhere you go, I always say the world is my home, and each country is just another room in the house. And even though that is home, I've been here for 12 years now, so it's going home now is more so of a holiday. But Norway is quite a magnificent place as well.
And is there anything that you miss about home?
Well, home is where you make it. So I don't think it's not so much the place, it's more so the people. I do miss my family, my friends, and so on and so forth. And obviously, being here now, you create new friends like the two of you, and that's wonderful. But I think, with the time that we have with our family, it's important to spend that with them. So I do travel home a fair bit. Like anyone else, I'd say family is definitely the thing that I miss the most. And of course, and now I'm in a relationship, but I'll tell you, gentlemen, the women are gorgeous.
And so
as are the men, for those who
I was going to say, like,
give yourself some credit, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
So how did you find it coming over, you say 12 years ago to Australia? Like, how did you find the integration to move in, well, first of all, move in country, and then how did you find like integrating with a bunch of Aussies?
I was on a mission, so I had a really big why. My little brother passed away when I was younger, and then my sister was born 2 years later, disabled and handicapped from the waist and down. So me going to Australia was not just going somewhere to study. It was determined, and I was determined, and I was on a mission to become a health professional with the intent to help people with similar issues. So for me, it was literally, I just asked the question, the world is a small place, and, if I only had a couple of years left to live, what would I do? And I thought, I wanted to become a chiropractor. And I thought, yes, I could study that in Sweden or go other places. No chiropractic education in Norway yet, 2017, go figure. That's Arendelle for you. But I realized that the world is a small place, and I wanted to see it all. And I thought, where can I go where there's English-speaking people, it's safe, and it's a beautiful tropical climate? And then I realized that one of the best universities in the world was here in Australia. So needless to say, here I am.
Beautiful.
And sorry, but, part of our podcast is sort of delving into, the lives of people to understand a little bit about them. And, I just want to find out a little bit more about, the events in your life with your siblings. So Kevin, your younger brother, it sounds like it was a fairly tough time and quite tragic in terms of the way that you found out about his death. Do you mind just explaining a little bit more about that?
Not at all. I think it's important to recognize that every person born or raised wherever in this world are always going to encounter challenges, obstacles, things that we need to face, things that we consider to be hard, and things that we might not be prepared for. So, growing up in a small family, my mum and dad separated when I was young, and when we in 1988, when my little sister and I were woken up in the morning by a horrendous scream. We ran into my little brother's bedroom and found him passed away in his bed, and my mum was there crying, and so on and so forth. So, that started for me the first major trauma in my life, where, as a young man at the time, I didn't really know how to deal with these emotions. And when, people out there, and I hope people can relate, maybe not necessarily losing someone that close to them, but losing someone, and also potentially going through hardship in their own life and with their own emotions and with their own experiences, there's two ways we can respond to it. We can ask the question, why is this happening to me? Which renders us in a very often a defenseless and victim mentality. Or we can change the question, how might this be happening for me? But as a younger individual, I didn't have that knowledge. So for me, I was caught up in the emotional overwhelm that my mother was experiencing at the time. She was alone. And then when my brother passed, it was only my sister and I to try and support her. She had a complete breakdown. And you just do the best you can with what you have. I think, when things like that happen, if you can reflect on it and go back, and I appreciate the beautiful, humble nature of how you asked that question, but I truly do believe now, after having done so much self-development work, that there are just as many benefits as drawbacks to each and every circumstance that we experience and attract into our lives as spiritual beings. So it's one of the greatest lessons that I've ever learned, never to take our loved ones for granted, never to take life for granted as well.
And it's lovely how you put that. And after doing like some research on you, before this podcast, I can in a way now understand like your mindset. So through your meditation and your yoga, and that's obviously shaped how you feel about things now and how you react to situations, which is really beautiful. So thanks for sharing that. And it was also tough when your younger sister Katinka, she was also I think that was 2 years after Kevin passed away, and she was born paralyzed from the waist down. So that obviously added more trauma and stress to, I guess, your family. And how did you deal with that after what you'd already been through?
That's a really great question. I think I'd like to answer that with a little bit of a takeaway. I think for me, when things happen now, when I coach and consult clients and things happen and they experience hardship, I always say, compared to what? So we can find ourselves, being really stuck in traffic and frustrated, and the world is ending because we're late to work and we didn't have breakfast and we didn't have our coffee and we have overdue bills and all of these small things that accumulate. And then we feel like life is just, excuse my French, fucking shit. And, we are, struggling, and I call it perceived suffering. And it's always compared to what? I mean, both of you have experienced the country where, you might have seen some hardship and people that have not been as well off as what we are here in Australia, and also, potentially most of the Norwegian people. And so every time we find ourselves thinking, it's important to ask the question, compared to what? So when my little brother passed away, that was tough. And my little sister was born handicapped 2 years later. That was a blessing to us. Because we had lost someone that we would never get back. And the family had come together. And every time there is, that kind of internal challenge, the family comes together to grow and develop and help each other heal. And when my little sister Katinka was born, she was rushed off the hospital. She almost died. She had multiple surgeries, but she survived. And as such, that became a blessing to us, because compared to what? Well, we compared it to Kevin passing away. So now she's alive and she's, mentally well. We were really grateful. And I think that's one of the most important things to remember. There are always things to be grateful for.
Yeah, that's really, really, really important in life. I agree with you. Is to also always look back and be grateful for the stuff that you do have, and we could easily find ourselves being super focused on the bad stuff that's happened. And easier said than done when you're dealing with such incredible hardships that you were dealing with. But at the same time, compared to what I think, I'll definitely take that away. So, when you were, how old were you at this stage now when your sister was born?
I was in 1990. You're asking me to do maths now.
More or less. So you're a young man. So mentally, like you're having to look after your mum as well a little bit and sort of man up. Is that would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, definitely. And I can tell you this is as far as I've gotten in life now with, consider whatever you think success is with the science of achievement or the art of fulfillment or however you want to look at it. The honest situation was that I, as a young man, had no idea how to deal with these emotions. So my mother started drinking heavily, becoming, some would call it abusive. I think it's just a beautiful way to act out when you don't know how to deal with things when you're all alone. And so she started drinking and acting out in that way. I started doing the same. I started when there were no rules in the house. So I could basically do whatever I wanted. I'd disappear for days. I started fighting and getting into drugs. And eventually what happened was that the universe, I believe that the universe gives us exactly what we need until we can see the lesson for what it is. We can learn from it, take full responsibility for it. I say every time we blame, we're not growing. So, when one finger's pointing that way, three fingers are pointing back. So, but I didn't realize how to deal with this. So I started thinking that, I've gone through this, first, God or whoever took my brother and then delivered a handicapped sister. And then my mother became an alcoholic or, call it whatever you'd like. And so I was, had a little bit of a don't fuck with me attitude and, became, like I said, got into drugs and fighting and ended up spending my 20th birthday in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but again, same thing. I was never an evil person, but I attracted into my life the lessons that I needed to learn. And after having gotten into some bar fights and got, picked up on lots of small things, really, I was incarcerated. And I remember spending my 20th birthday in prison thinking, well, this is not really how I wanted to design my life. Let's put it that way. So I had to really go through that lesson, and I had to go through that suffering to be able to look myself in the mirror and say, I'm ready to redesign my life. And that was the turning point in my life that led me to want to, instead of having to spend another 10 years being angry, because that's exactly what I did. I was angry, and because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't have the skills and the experiences that I have now. So I was angry, and that came out in a young hyperactive Viking you could imagine, trying to deal with these things, and eventually got put in jail. But then I realized after being in jail for 4 months, I realized that I didn't want to spend another 10 years being angry. I wanted to dedicate my life to helping people. And I can't help people with the way I was acting out. So that's when I started studying and researching and developing myself and really doing the work that was needed. And that became the first part of the rest of my life, which also brought me to Australia to do what I'm doing now.
So when you were sitting in prison, obviously a low point for you, and you knew that at the time, and you were sort of the ball rolling, I guess, to where you are now. Did you meet characters in the jail that sort of helped you along that journey, or were in any way like a catalyst to where you are now, or did you meet some interesting people there?
Who have you been talking to?
Phone call.
Yeah. Just make sure you say the right answer, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I didn't meet someone, but I had that was the catalyst exactly. I had a little bit of don't mess with me, don't fuck with me kind of attitude. And when you're a young 20-year-old in prison, it's not necessarily the best attitude to have. So I got beaten really, really badly once. I got pulled out of my cell in the middle of the night and beaten with billiard. If you play billiard, I don't know, the pool balls, they put the pool balls into socks and pulled me out in the snow and gave me a really good beating. So I ended up in hospital. And it was, but again, same thing, we can say, oh, well, that's terrible, but is it really? Don't we attract exactly what we needed? I needed to hit that low point, and that became, like I said, the catalyst to want to help people. And in fact, I'll take it even one step further. I developed then, you could imagine, now that I've dedicated my life to, what I believe is humble servant leadership and the transformational and betterment of others, that was exactly what I needed. I fought and I wasn't violent, but I was certainly not going to take, crap from anyone. But that developed a bit of guilt inside me. And that guilt was, hey, I've fought people, broken jaws and broken arms and whatever else. And I had a void that created this emotion inside of me that I need to go help people. So when I got beaten really badly, I almost, I wouldn't say died, but I definitely had a cracked skull and a couple other things. And that was enough. I needed that low point. I needed that pitfall to be able to design my life in a different way. And I didn't realize it until many years, probably 10 years after this again, that I had spent those 10 years not just being angry, but fighting, which created a void inside me, a guilt to have, because I had hurt people, which that void was the thing that was driving the value to come to Australia to help people, which is why I was able to create, the largest hot yoga and wellness franchise in the history of Australia. And without that void, I wouldn't have been as driven and as passionate to create that change in the community. So again, we can look back and reflect on things in life and say, why did this happen to me? Or we can change the question to how might that have happened for me? And now that I see that, I've been able to release from all guilt and see that without that void, those 10,000 plus people wouldn't have been helped. And that gives me great joy because, well, then there is nothing to forgive.
And Espen, I mean, that's a great way of looking at your life and an awesome mindset. However, how do you teach that to people? Because most people, I would say, are not wired the same way as you and are maybe as positive thinking. So like to get them to reframe negative situations or events in their life, what do you teach? How do you do it?
It's a really good question. And let's be honest, I'm not this hoorah, everything's going to be perfect kind of positive thinking, motivational guy. I've almost died 3 times. I found my brother passed away in his bed. I went through a tough time. I was in prison. I had to work. I do everything myself, I don't know about your background growing up, but I never got given anything. I came here all by myself. We haven't spoken about the accident that I had just yet, but that almost died in hospital twice from that as well. So I guess what I'd say to people is, you may have experienced tremendous hardship. You may not have experienced tremendous hardship. It really makes no difference. The point is that there are always going to be challenges in your life, and you can attract those lessons into your life if you need to, or you can change the mindset by changing your belief system around how things are happening and why things are happening. And if you change the belief system and you start to see things on the way, not in the way, you can begin to take those lessons from experiences you learn and have, and experiences other people learn and have, without necessarily needing to go through the trauma. So I think to answer that question, which is a really brilliant question, because the takeaway is really, how do we empower ourselves to make the difference, is simply change what you believe about challenges, change what you believe about life, change what you believe about obstacles, and truly understand that the greater the obstacle, the greater the hero. If you can change and rewire your nervous system by doing the self-development work needed, then an event will still take place. But now, instead of thinking it's happening to me, this victim mentality, now it might be happening for me. And then right away, that whatever emotion, that negative emotion, will start to dissolve. So for all the listeners out there, it's like, yes, we know we're going to have challenges. Yes, we know there's going to be shit days, but we also know there is balance. There is no sunshine without the rain, or there might be, but you wouldn't even appreciate it. So there is black and white, there's dark, there's night. There's always opportunities for us to grow and heal and develop ourselves, only if we believe that it's possible and what we believe we can achieve. So if we change our belief system, we can change our life.
Yeah.
Was that too quick? Was that too slow?
No, that was perfect. But
that was an amazing podcast. Like,
Yeah.
thanks so much for coming. Like, that was just like, what an amazing takeaway. So, like, just before we move on from that, just taking a small step back. I mean, I don't know how many people I know that have almost died a few times, and there are a few of them, and not all of them have been able to come through with a positive spin on life, and I think that's really cool. So, first of all, like, what happened? How do you almost die 2 or 3 times in one lifetime already?
Well, the first one was when I got beaten in jail and ended up in hospital with a cracked skull and all sorts of issues. And then the second one was the motorbike accident. So I came to Australia to study to become a chiropractor. I was already a nutritionist and personal trainer and physical education teacher from Norway, with the intent to become a chiropractor and serve in that way, mostly inspired from my little sister being handicapped. And then knowing the importance of taking care of one's spine, not because of the spine, but because it houses and protects your central nervous system. And when I came here, I had been here started to study, had done 1 semester, and then I got a phone call in the middle of the night. It was my mother, and she said, you better sit down. And I said, well, I'm already lying down. It's the middle of the night. What are you talking about? And she goes, I've been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I'm being given 3 months left to live. And like drops, right? And so then again, clouded by emotion, not able to see it on the way, but experience it in the way. So obviously family comes first. If you don't take care of your family, then what have you got? So I jumped on a plane. Well, first I had a hell of a party. I called up the boys and I said, I've got to go. So there was a lot of whiskey consumed, and the next afternoon I was on a plane in Norway from Australia, and just dedicated myself to taking care of my mother. All the things that I now teach, the wellness philosophies, the fundamental pillars of health, eating well, moving well, thinking well, and changing your belief about the fact that, what you believe you'll achieve. So I flew home to Norway, and I, just held space with her and gave her tremendous amounts of love, and looked her in the eye and asked a simple question: Mum, do you believe it's possible for you to heal from this? 3 months left to live, 15 by 18 centimeter tumor, pressing against her heart, inoperable. And she goes, yeah, I do believe. And her eyes convinced me of yes. And so we went to work. And to this day, my mum's still alive. And that's pretty cool. And that's not to say that, the holistic wellness therapies that we offer will save our lives or cure cancer, but they truly will strengthen the opportunity that we have to heal. And particularly so will the belief system that it's possible. If you hear a doctor say to a patient, you've got 3 months left to live, if the patient embodies this belief and really, believes that this will be their outcome, we know through placebo effect and the biology of belief, like Professor Bruce Lipton says, that's most likely what will happen, even though that might not necessarily have been the destiny for this person. So when her eyes could convince me of yes, that it was possible for her to heal, then I said, well, let's freaking get to work. So we did the cleansing, did the healing, did the breathing, did the, all of the energy work and the things, the nutrition and the detox and so on. And she got well. And so when she started recovering, I jumped on the plane, went back to Australia and met with the professor at uni and said, I want to finish on time with the rest of my students. And so we overloaded lots of subjects, and, I managed to complete. But before I graduated, when I came back to Australia, I still had some, I guess I would call it trapped energy issues in my tissues when I came back, because I was frustrated now. I'm like, shit, my mum's been diagnosed ill, and now I'm back. She's going better, but now I've got to pick up all these studies. So I was on my way to work. I was working 4 jobs as an international student, and came off on my motorbike, a 600cc, doing almost about 100, and low-sided as it's called, hit the gravel, and went through a fence and went through a tree and broke both my legs and part of my back in 2006, which was pretty scary. I remember my right foot was on my chest with my toes pointing towards my shin, and I looked down, I saw my shoe, and I was like, snap, that's not really good. I actually got a video of it. I actually videoed it. I got my phone out and I filmed it. And it was a silly thing to do. But I got it on video anyway. but somehow I knew in my heart that if everything was going to be okay. I cannot really explain it, and it's not one of the things that I very often share. But I've always had a knowing that things will be okay. And I think, it's not something that I often share because not everyone feels that knowing. A lot of people live with fear, this false evidence appearing real that things will not be okay, and I just felt that everything would be okay. But when there was two osteopath students that found me in the park and came over and started pinching my legs, and it quickly became evident that I couldn't feel my right leg at all, and I felt a sharp pain in my back. So I was frightened that I also had become paralyzed now. One of my greatest fears was not just dying like my brother, but becoming disabled like my sister, which probably would have been even worse for a young athlete like myself. Rushed off to hospital, got put back together, whole bunch of metal screws, the lot. I broke both my legs and part of my spine, which was the second time I almost died. The third time was the real scary one. That's when I had gone in to take all the bits of metal out of my body about a year later. And the doctor actually didn't sterilize. There's no one to blame, but I was told this by the registered nurse at the time that this particular physician had a habit of not sterilizing. Which is what we see in Australia and America and a lot of other countries now, this incredible infection rate in hospitals that going out really, really quickly. In Norway, it's funny, we call the hospital the sick house. They're wonderful, they save lives, but they are very often a house full of sick people. That's exactly what happened to me. So I attracted this MRSA, this multi-resistant Staph aureus infection, which effectively is a flesh-eating bacterial infection. And it basically eroded and ate away about a third of my gluteal muscles on the right-hand side. And I remember it was a Monday morning when the doctor looked me in the eyes, and I was laid up in hospital with intravenous drips, and I was 15 kilos lighter. I was basically dying because of the fact that I was flooded with heavy, broad-spectrum antibiotics. That, if you know something about the immune system and the bacterial flora in the gut, if you take too many antibiotics, you will start to develop resistance in the body. And so my immune system was just shot. I knew in my heart that I was dying. He looked me in the eyes and he said, "You got a 50-50 chance of losing your right leg from the hip and down. And if the infection continues to spread like it is, you might die because it might start to attack your internal organs." And then it was weird. It was literally just, I knew in my heart that it had to change and that what I was doing wasn't working. And I think it was not a decision. It was an intuitive behavior. It was just, I literally just said, "Thank you so much for your time." And as soon as he left, I just ripped the IVs out of my vein. And I literally just stumbled out of hospital and I called him to come pick me up. He came on his motorcycle and picked me up. And we drove home and I said, "Let's do this." And so we started going to work. I knew that it had worked for my mother. So we started, juicing, cleansing, healing, praying, meditating, sweating, practicing yoga, getting adjusted, by a chiropractor, and I at least checked almost every day. And at that point, I had this infection for many months and nothing seemed to be working. But 3 weeks after I left the hospital and stopped the antibiotic treatment, a little hole that I had on the side of my right-hand side of the pelvis suddenly closed off. And within a matter of, hours, I'd say 6 hours, my whole body was puffed up like a marshmallow man. And my lymph system started going to work and I was falling in and out of consciousness. And long story short, I managed to beat the infection, and that's why I'm alive and still have two strong, good legs today. That was the third time I almost said goodbye.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's really hectic, but then you have obviously a really strong mindset and way of thinking to overcome that. I'd just like to find out a little bit more. You ran through it now. Some of the things that you implemented, both to your mom when she had cancer and to you when you were ill from the infection. You said the meditation, the nutrition, the adjustments, etc. Can you just run through those again, just like, because I actually also personally know quite a lot of people that are wanting to overcome cancer in a more sort of holistic way rather than getting chemo, etc. So what did you guys do?
Well, the first thing to remember is, again, coming back to the belief system. You know, it's been proven now that the body does respond to what we believe. You know, Professor Bruce Lipton wrote the book, The Biology of Belief, and left the Stanford University where he was teaching medicine. And he said that I cannot teach that genes. He was a founder of epigenetics, effectively, where epigenetics is, in the simplest form, means that the genes that we have, we can't change them. Okay, you didn't pick them, you didn't choose them, you can't change them. And it's not so much that you're a victim of your history. What runs in your family may be, passed on to you in about 7 to 10% of cases. So if you look at chronic disease in general, most of the stuff that we see now, according to Professor Bruce Lipton, 95% of it, in fact, is lifestyle related. And I'm not saying that we can cure or fix cancer or any other and all chronic diseases with this. But what I'm saying is, firstly, understand and truly be congruent with what it is that you believe. Because if you do believe that it's possible for you to heal, that is the very first part. If you don't believe that it's possible for you to heal, it is still possible for you to heal if you do the belief system work properly. The second part is that we are, or I do believe that we are a spirit that lives inside a human form. I believe that inside of us there is some sort of spirit, there is some sort of life force. I like to call the soul the state of unconditional love. And I believe that there is a spirit inside all of us, and all of us are unique. There's about 70 trillion cells in the body, and each of our bodies have an estimated 6 trillion actions per cell per second. That's how magnificent we are. And that is all controlled without the need for us to think about it. Your food is digesting right now. Your nervous system is controlling your heart rate. You know, all the things that you're doing, you don't need to think about. So if we realize that we are this human form, this human vessel, and we live in this human body, the body is the only place we have to live, so we need to take care of it. As we go through life, we bioaccumulate the positive things and the healthy choices that we make, and also the negative things and the healthy choices that we make. And it's really simple. If the choices that we make normally, on average, are healthier, we will become healthier, and vice versa. But I think very often people forget that there isn't just the physical aspect of health. There's the mental, the emotional, the chemical, and also the spiritual parts of well-being that encapsulates who we are in this human form. So if we are to begin to heal, first, understand and be congruent with your belief system that it is possible for you to recover and heal and take life to your next level. Second, truly find out that what's been happening in your life, what's been showing up in your life, and understand the physical, mental, emotional, chemical, and spiritual parts of your life, and to some degree find a coach or a mentor that can, one, find out where you are right now. You know, if I ask the question to any of my patients and I'll say, tell me from 0 to 100, how healthy are you right now? We will all begin to guess. Subjectively, we'll begin to guess. Or I guess I'm healthy because I don't feel pain, or I don't have symptoms, or I haven't been diagnosed with anything. But the question is, does the absence of symptoms truly mean that we are well and not just surviving, but thriving? I think that's what a lot of people want these days, is they're sick and tired of doing it the old way, and they don't want to be, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. So then the question is, are you ready to step up now? Are you ready to allow the rest of your life to be the best of your life? Or are you willing to wait until your shoulds become a must? So it's asking that question now proactively as, what is health, to me? What does health mean to me? And you get results in direct proportion to the energy, effort, time, and finance that you're willing to put in. So how much is it worth to you, and are you willing to do the work?
Okay, so that's some fantastic advice for the listeners. But what other things are there? You kind of, besides believing, there's more to it. Like you said, there's nutrition, there's adjustments, there's mindset. There's what is there any specifics? That is worth mentioning to help people that are in similar situations as you were.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I wanted to bring that out before I give you the solutions is that I truly want people to reflect. I always say to my patients as well, where do you want to be in 10 years from now? Because any person can look up nutrition or mindset or something like that. In fact, it's not Today, it's not so much a lack of information. You guys are providing an incredible channel and opportunity for people to get inspiration, but I don't think it's, to get information, but I don't think it's just information or motivation or even inspiration. I think it's transformation. So we have to go back to the question, what does this mean to you? Because if I send you my book on nutrition right now, you might absorb it and love it and use it to transform your life. Or you might read it and go, oh yeah, that's great, I'll get to that later, and it has absolutely no effect. So definitely we will talk about the fundamental wellness pillars, the foundations of health today, and I'll give you my 3 top ones that are truly the most important. But I'd love for the listeners to make sure that they understand that advice like this is not to be taken lightly. And it's important to recognize that if we do make decisions, we need to have a big enough why around it. Because when the why is big enough, the how takes care of itself. So, and the reason why I say that is because I've been able to see over 10,000 patients now, and I see what works and I see what doesn't work. If you give someone the tools, they have to make it meaningful. They have to implement it in their life, and even more so, they should have an accountability coach or partner that guides them through this process to enable the results to continue, and also to be able to see the difference from where we started to where we are, if that makes sense. So with that in mind, where do we start? Oh gosh, it's tough. Firstly, it's important to understand that genetic plays a role. It's also important to understand that lifestyle and environment plays a role. So if we do live in different parts of the world, there will be different outcomes. And then what do we talk about? What's the easiest? The most fundamental components, if you take it from a human being down to a cellular level, there are certain things that the cell requires to live. It's air, it's water, and air being oxygen, it's water, it's nutrition, and it's nerve supply. So if we take it back to that, what is nutrition? Today, how do you eat lean, green, and clean? How do you alkalize the body and allow the body to have, more in nutrients but less calories in most cases in the modern society anyway? So it's eating well. The second component, I would say, is moving well. Movement truly is life, and as we see with society now, if people aren't moving enough, when you get ill, do you move more or less if you get a fever and a flu?
Yeah, less.
You move less, right? If you get cancer or get sick, whatever happens, normally you move less. So movement truly does equal life. And if you look at young children, they'll normally move a lot more than us. But if we are living in this modern lifestyle, what we see is we move less and less. And with that less movement comes less energy, comes less life force, comes more sickness. So the second thing is movement. And with movement, it's not go to the gym, lift some weights and do that. It's find out what movement, and note that I don't say exercise, find out what movement you're passionate about, what lights you up, what you used to do as a child, what you'd like to do now, and go and do that regularly in an accountability group that ensures that you're going to go there. And hopefully it'll have, an effect on your cardiovascular system, your endocrine system, your musculoskeletal system, and all of these bits that are important for us. And after eating well and moving well comes thinking well. It's an opportunity for us to truly understand that the body is in response to the brain. What we think about, we bring about. So if you could imagine now, as I always say, imagine if you close your eyes and you have a half a lemon in front of you, and this lemon is ripe, it's ready, it's juicy as all hell. If you put this lemon in your mouth, and imagine that you bite down as hard as you can on this lemon, right away your mouth will start to salivate. Right? And ladies and gentlemen, there is no lemon, but yet even just listening to the word lemon and biting down on it, you are salivating. So my body's responding to my brain. And that's where think well comes in. We can talk about eating well and moving well all day, but if we are still thinking, we are accumulating that fight or flight, and we don't have to pretend like this is not real anymore. We know that the way we are wired in our nervous system, if we stay in fight or flight all the time, cortisol builds up, vital organs shut down, and we become sicker. So we know that the way we think and the quality of our most dominant emotion will have a direct impact on our cellular and physical well-being. So then the next part is perhaps working out, to the listeners out there, what is the most dominant emotion that you're experiencing the majority of the time? Is it nurturing, or is it something that's going to make you sick? You know, I was living with anger as my primary emotion for 10 years. You can imagine what that does to a person.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
now, my most dominant emotion now is gratitude, which is the byproduct of a lot of these, the work that I've done. But the thinking well part is extremely important because, you know, as I say, what we think about, we bring about, and what we think about, we bring about. So what is that thought process and how do we do it? It's about changing your belief system. It's about changing your mindset. And it's about truly recognizing that you have so much to be grateful for and designing a life of this gratitude. For me, the thinking part is the self-development work that I've done and practicing yoga. Yoga for me is an engine for positive thinking because I submit myself into a hot room. I practice and teach the hot yoga. And as soon as I step into that hot yoga room, I'm challenged with my own reflection in the mirror, with a very hot room, with sweating, with needing to be still in the moment of frustration where my heart's beating and my muscles are aching and I'm still holding space. And when I submit myself to that voluntary suffering, that I would say uncomfortable experience, I find my peace. And that for me has been one of the greatest things that I've been able to do to find my peace in challenging circumstances as well. Reconnect back to the body, reconnect back to the present moment, and reconnect back to breath.
Well said. And, you know, yoga, you know, when I first heard about yoga, and I think I'm not alone on this, is, you know, people going, oh, I want to get flexible. I want to be able to touch my toes and say, look at me, you know. But and you kind of preempted what I wanted to ask you is like what yoga sort of means to you, and it's quite a profound thing. If I'm hearing you, it's not just about flexibility. And I think for a lot of people out there listening, I think yoga's become a lot more popular, but I still think there are a lot of people that have that misconception. So what was your journey with yoga, and where did that begin?
What a great question, Gareth. I just want to ask quickly: Did I answer your question before about the pillars?
Yeah, you did, bud. That was awesome. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And before so you answer that question, just, you know, I think it's really powerful what you said. Mindset and like our brains and how we deal with you know, mental issues is something that just gets ignored by people. You know, they're like their focus seems to be on like being physically fit, and I think most people don't train their brains enough these days. So yeah, thanks for sort of mentioning that. But yeah, let's speak yoga now, bud. Like yoga's powerful, and I'm really keen to hear what you think about it.
Certainly. Yoga is very cool. I love what you said there. It was all really awesome, Craig. You said, you know, the flexibility part. I think, again, it comes back to belief systems. Okay, so what do you believe about yoga? The most common, you know, question we have about yoga, or the most common objection or feedback that we get is, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible enough. You know, I always say saying that you're too inflexible for yoga is saying that you're too dirty to take a bath. It's funny, isn't it? Because no one ever says, oh, going to the gym and doing physical exercise or doing weights, I can't go to the gym. I don't have big enough muscles. Yeah. You know, it's just like, that's great. It's funny, isn't it? It's funny because you think that, oh, it's about flexibility. The first thing to recognize is that's about belief system, right? So why don't we practice yoga? Well, you know, maybe you never tried it, maybe you don't understand the value of it, or maybe it's just not for you. That's cool. Everyone has their different styles of inspired movement, as we discussed before. The second part is saying that yoga is about flexibility. Is kind of like saying that eating well is to lose weight. You know, if you are overweight and you start eating well, a byproduct of those choices might be unhealthy fats leaving your body because they don't need to be stored anymore. But I believe eating well is about giving the body, the 70 trillion cells with 6 trillion actions per cell per second, the nutrition and the vital constitution that it needs to perform its actions. Most of us are overfed and undernourished, which means that we put in too many calories but not enough nutrients. And if our physical body don't have the building blocks to perform at its level, then the byproduct of that will be sickness and disease, which may present with symptomatology, as in symptoms, you know, feeling not so good, or it might just accumulate to become cancer or heart disease, which normally doesn't have a symptom until very often it's too late, very often too late. which was almost the case for my mother. And so coming back to yoga and understanding, we now know that we don't eat just for the taste or for the experience or for the flavor. We eat, if we are smart, for what it does for our bodies. We eat because we choose to nourish our bodies with the things that it needs. So in byproduct, what that'll give us is an elevated state of energy, elevated vibration, and an elevated opportunity for our spirit to be expressed in human form. That is my belief about nutrition. Then what is the belief about yoga? Well, I can't do yoga because I'm not too flexible, or even just that yoga is about flexibility, I think is a little bit of a misnomer. I think that's pretty outdated. Yoga, for me, became one of the pillars that saved my life. Because, when you break your legs and your back, clearly you're stuck in a wheelchair and so on and so forth. You need to rehabilitate yourself. But it wasn't until I realized that yoga for me creates stillness. Yoga for me creates emotional mastery. Yoga for me brings me back to my breath and my present time conscious moment. Most people in the modern day life today are stuck in fight or flight. They are stuck in this heightened sympathetic nervous system stimulation that breaks down, as I said before, a lot of the vital functions that we require as human beings to be well, because we are not able to downregulate into the parasympathetic rest and digest. So to make it a little bit easier to understand, it's like a tiger is kind of hanging around the corner. It's there, and you constantly go around terrified of dying or being eaten alive. The real fact is there is no tiger, and you're not going to be eaten alive. But because you're late to work, your boss is on your back, your children screaming, the assignment's overdue, and all of these things accumulate, your nervous system lives in a state of shit, I'm about to be eaten alive. So exercise has been proven to be very effective in general to lower these cortisol levels and bring us back to the state of harmony. But for me, no other form of movement does that like yoga does. When I step into that room and I get rid of my monkey mind and I truly get to reconnect with my breath, which is also where you mentioned before, Gareth, meditation comes in. I get to truly find peace in the present time moment. And like Einstein said, there is no future, there is no past, because eternity is now. And now is all we have. If we can't be fully present with our loved ones, if we can't be fully present right now with the three of us and those listeners, and truly feel how this is, how we are experiencing life, then we are missing out on this major point. If you're stuck in the past, if you're stuck in the future, you forget about the now, and the only experience we have now is what we call life. So yoga for me is physical, of course it is. I get to move, stretch, sweat, push myself cardiovascularly, all the above. It's mental. I get to hold space for myself as I push myself through uncomfortable postures while being conscious of my breath. It's chemical because I get the chemical responses. It's emotional because I get to open my chest and release my emotions from my tissues. And it's certainly a spiritual experience because I find gratitude in my postures. When I look in the mirror and I see that I've got two strong legs that are holding me up, and my sister has never had a chance to walk on two strong feet like you and I and most people out there, I find gratitude and peace in that moment. And for me, yoga does all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, that's beautiful, but I totally resonate with what you're saying, and I find yoga extremely, like you said, calming in my life as well. But it also kind of puts me in place, you know what I mean? Like you think you can touch your toes or do a certain twist, whatever, and you find it's actually really, really difficult. So it's quite a humbling form of exercise as well, which I think a lot of people don't actually understand, you know what I mean? Like, especially guys look at yoga like, oh, this is something for girls to do, so what are your thoughts about that? Like,
I'll answer your question with a question. What's the first thing I brought up when we talked about health? It's about your
movements. Mind,
belief system. So what's the belief system? Belief system is such a beautiful point you bring up, Gareth. What's the belief system? The belief system is yoga's not for me. The belief system is yoga's for ladies. The belief system is we used to think, it's funny though, because if you go back about 300 years, 300 to 400 years, it was science that the earth was completely flat. Everyone knew this. Everyone knew this. The earth is flat. In fact, those thought leaders out there, the paradigm shifters out there, they said, no, the world is not flat. It's in fact round, and it's got other worlds around, and they're round, and they all go around. People got ridiculed and burnt alive at the stake because they believed something that was ahead of their time. Now, I'm not saying that what we believe or what we perceive is ahead of our time, but I would like to raise a point to say, perhaps what we believe today might not be exactly what the truth or reality is, or we might need to disassociate ourselves and ask the question, is my belief system congruent with how I want to design my life? Yoga was originally invented for men. Did you know that? Yoga did not start with females. It started with men. It was a strong practice for men only. And then, of course, I believe, excuse us gentlemen, that women are sometimes a bit more emotionally involved than we are. And so I believe that for a female to step into that yoga practice is more natural for them, because guys are supposed to grind and work hard and be strong and not vulnerable and, live in the mind, and yoga's not for me. And that's great, this bloke mentality. I used to have that as well. But isn't it also part of the mastery for a man to be able to admit and submit to vulnerability? One of the greatest things that I always used to say is I lived in the mind for so many years, and I could create and design and build with this masculine energy, which was awesome. But I didn't really find my peace and find my power until I could admit that, that I do have feminine traits as well. And I appreciate the fact that I can sit still, hold space, and tell, someone that I care about that I truly love them. And I can be vulnerable. I can allow myself to be sad and shed a tear from time to time, because that is part of who I am. And I believe that if we suppress that, well, it's going to come up louder and louder and louder until you embody the fact that you own all traits. You can be more masculine, you can be more feminine, but you own all traits. And yoga is not a masculine or a feminine trait. It's an opportunity for us to express who we are, and I believe shed the layers that's holding us back. And with that, comes an opportunity for people to see if that's for them. And if it is, that's awesome. If it's not, find whatever you're passionate about. Find the big why. The thing, time and space disappear and you're left with nothing but gratitude and presence. Whatever that is, do that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, you can clearly tell that you're not just, you practice what you preach. Your belief systems have led you to where you are. And I think one of your belief systems must have been that, with your legs being broken, your belief from the get-go was that it will be okay. And so what I'd like to ask is, you've done a lot of different kinds of sports, and one thing I really wanted to touch on is, I'm just conscious of time as well, before we move on though, but you're using different training techniques, and I'd love to know, does yoga come into the fact that you're not a ninja warrior, and belief system and training methods? And talk to us about your journey with coming from the two broken legs to a person that's actually being challenged as one of the top physical sort of activities and shows that there possibly could be. Tell us a little bit more about that whole journey.
In its physical aspect, or in what way? Do you mean like what?
Well, both. First of all, I'd like to know the nitty gritty of how you actually ended up going for that. But also, it must be quite a big full circle for you, and that's what I'd like to kind of know more about in terms of your headspace around that whole scenario.
Yeah. So Australian Ninja Warrior is similar to Ninja Warrior UK or American Ninja Warrior, which for those of you who are listening that might not have heard about it before, is basically a reality TV obstacle course show where it starts with thousands, very often thousands and thousands of contestants, narrowed down to the 250 here in Australia. They get to participate and be a part of the TV show. It was the highest rating show in Australia, and I had an opportunity to be a contestant on season 1, and ended up doing really well. Did not win, but I had an incredible run. And I just believe that it was the right time and place for me to get onto the show. And it was not just my physical capabilities as a black belt martial artist or yoga teacher, or I used to do aesthetic fitness and whatever else. It was more so my story that was part of it. And I think now that I've if you go back and look at me 10 years ago when I was 24 years old, I was actually, if you look at my body and you would have measured my physical the state of health, I was not nearly far from as healthy as I am now at 34. And because of the fact that my belief system is getting stronger, my habits are getting stronger, and I'd say that the two biggest factors are this: my emotional well-being is better, my mindset is more congruent with the vitalistic model that I have, and I am more living a lot more in my heart than I am living in my head. Living in your head can be difficult, particularly if you try to control a lot of things. So one of the greatest recipes for depression is trying to control the things that you can't, And so when I tapped into my heart, I truly started to listen a bit more to what was happening around me with the universe. And I believe that everything we need to know is around us at all times. And so I was practicing. I was actually traveling Europe at the time, and I got a phone call from an old patient of mine that says, this new TV show, it's come out, you should try out for it. And when I clicked on the link and I read up about it, because I had never heard about it before. I think I'd seen it maybe once or twice on TV, right? This American Ninja Warrior thing. I was like, oh, that looks rad. But never gave it a second thought. And then he calls up and he sends me this link, and I click on this link. And immediately when I open up this webpage, I am filled with goosebumps. Mm-hmm. My whole body just rushes with goosebumps. And I'm like, I believe that when we experience goosebumps, disappears, and or we get a tear of gratitude, I believe that that's the universe speaking to us and through us. So we should take note of that. If you pick up a guitar and start playing the guitar, and suddenly it's 3 hours later and you're like, oh my God, what happened? I've been in flow, this transient hyperfrontality. I've been in a state of flow for so long, I didn't even realize what was happening. Whatever it is that you do, that you experience that amount of insane flow and presence, that might be a part of your highest value and might be a part of your mission, vision, and legacy in this world. If you do what you're passionate about, you will allow your light to shine. And by allowing your light to shine, you unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And so when he sent this and I opened this thing up and I was like, no fucking way. I was filled with, excuse my French again, I'm passionate today. I read this form and I was like, wow, that looks awesome. I think that I can do it. And when I closed my eyes and just breathed and meditated for a second, I saw myself on that stage. And so I filled out the application. It went from, 10,000 applicants or something down to eventually the 250 that got onto the show. And I believe that it was just time for me to be able to do that. I believe that my journey and the hardship that I've gone through and the way that I've transformed it to being part of my journey as a beautiful lesson. I'm grateful for every one of these lessons, because in fact, if none of these or all of these wouldn't have happened, we probably wouldn't have had this discussion right now. So with that in mind, it was important for me to realize that, well, this is something that I believe that I should do, not just for myself, but I want to prove to people that you can lose loved ones, and you can come from a family with disability, and you can break your legs and almost die, and you can do this. And if I can do that, then they can do that. There's no difference between the obstacles that you face every day in your life. There's no difference between the obstacles that the listeners out there face every day in their life and the obstacles on the Ninja Warrior UK or American Australian Ninja Warrior. The only difference is how we respond to it and what we believe about it. So I wanted to get onto that show to prove to people that I can do it and you can do it, and know that if you choose to believe that it's possible, then it really is possible. And it sounds a bit cliche, but it's not, because I was there and I ran the course, and it is absolutely possible if you truly believe that it is. Again, coming back to the belief system.
Sorry, bud. So like we talk about the belief system a lot, but like, let's be realistic, okay? I mean, to get onto the show, you have to really be performing at the top of your physical game. I mean, like probably the top 1% in the world, you know. The training must be massively intense. It doesn't matter what your belief system is, you still have to put in the hard work. So, you know, can you tell us a bit about what sort of training you did for it?
Absolutely. So I was, like I said, I was traveling Europe when I first got the application. I filled it in. I had 3 months left to train before I got onto the show. I had spent the majority of my training with yoga and with lifting weights in the gym. Okay. And when you lift weights in the gym, you're not necessarily a very good ninja. You're heavy and you're strong, but not in the places where you need to be. So it was a really, really quick transition from, okay, I've spent the last 15 years as a guy trying to put muscle on, and now I have 3 months to take muscle off and really, really, really improve my grip strength, which is where I failed on the fifth obstacle just before the warped wall, literally just missing out on the semifinals because I was too heavy and too slow and my grip strength wasn't good enough. If you are considering training as a ninja warrior, you need to be quick, you need to be agile, you need to be able to have really good proprioception, which means sense of your limbs in space. So parkour is one of the very best ways to train movement, or free running as it's also called. Rock climbing is another one. So I started rock climbing every day. I'm still quite riddled with tendinitis now because it's an ongoing journey. And the last part of ninja training is to recognize that a major part of it is mindset. It's not just the physical aspects, but when you step up and there's 7 cameras in your face and there's flames everywhere and the obstacles are massive, it's 300 tons of steel I think they're created out of. So when you recognize that, most people that are really great athletes, their greatest challenge is not just that. The greatest challenge is the fear that comes up. They're not conditioned to be in that limelight. So there is a mental component to it as well. I'd say the greatest challenges with Ninja Warrior is, 1, the mental component, 2, the lack of proprioception or the ability to move like a cat would move quickly through an obstacle, and or a monkey, if you will. And 3, grip strength. You need to have really, really good grip strength.
And how do you practice your grip strength? Is it from a lot of like you said, rock climbing, or do you use those squeezy things? I forgot what they're called, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So the first part is, like I said, with movement, you can practice parkour and free running. When it comes to the mindset, I would just say get yourself into the circumstance and imagine that you've already overcome those obstacles. One of the greatest things that I did is I linked neurologically in my head, I linked the obstacles on an Australian Ninja Warrior course to an obstacle that I had already overcome in my life, such as, breaking my legs and overcoming that to becoming a better athlete than I was before that. So linking that and putting it into your brain that it's already been conquered, if you will. And then the third part is, how do you train the grip strength in climbing and movement? Rock climbing is 1, calisthenics is 2, and also if you have access to it, Ninja Warrior obstacle training. So literally hanging on to the nunchucks, hanging on to the bars, hanging on to a tire, doing, trying to run the warp wall, doing the salmon ladder, all these things. So training, if you want to be good at rock climbing, do rock climbing. If you want to be good at karate, do karate. If you want to be good as a Ninja Warrior, train on Ninja Warrior obstacles, and then rock climbing and parkour would be the most important ones.
Awesome. That's really great advice. And but I just wanted to find out, at what point in your life did you have to change the accent to your Aussie accent? Was it was it to when you were teaching yoga so people could understand you, or was it so that you could appeal to the Australian public on television, or was it for your public speaking?
My partner is a little bit upset with me, actually, because she's like, why have you lost your accent? That's not as sexy. I'm like, well, that sucks. She's cool. She's beautiful, mate. Oh my God. Anyway, back to that. I did not choose to let it go. It simply transformed. I mean, I think I was in Australia for about 3 months when I lost my accent. On the other hand, people can be here for 30 years and still have a thick accent. But in Norway, we normally talk like this. But I think because when we are young, we speak English because of the TV and the American TV shows. So when we come here, we talk a little bit with an American accent, and then it transformed to an Australian one. I don't know. It just happened.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Real plasticity.
I don't know if that was sexier though. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this later.
We'll put this. Shit. We'll have a vote on this when the listeners.
We'll vote on this when this comes out. What does everyone reckon about this one?
Suddenly you went retarded.
So I just really like to thank you for coming on today. And before we just finish off, just give us a little bit about like what are you up to in the next while, and also how can our listeners get in contact or follow you and look at all and check out all this cool stuff that you're busy with. If you just let us know about those platforms.
Yeah. I think, it depends on what kind of style of learning you prefer. I think podcasts and what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal. I want to give you guys credit before I give that little bit of information, because you guys take time out of your day to deliver value to the people out there. And it's important to remember that when you dedicate yourself to the service of others, the byproduct of that is that you're making the world a better place. And the byproduct of that should be gratitude and transformation in your own lives as well. So thank you for that. One of the greatest ways that I've ever learned in my life. Thank you so much. One of the greatest ways that I've ever learned in my life. I was very dyslexic when I was young. I struggled to read. And in fact, reading a second language when I was studying in Melbourne was extremely difficult. So one of the greatest ways that I could learn was to listen to audio. I was driving to uni on my motorbike or driving to work. I always just plug the earphones in and I'd listen to something new and I'd pick it up. And I think that's what a lot of podcasters out there are doing now. They're listening to podcasts instead of listening to, advertisement on the radio. And you guys are part of that educational hub. So thank you for that. So it's about, how can the listeners get in touch? Well, find out what style of learning you're best at. If it's listening, then do that. I've got obviously Facebook and Instagram that you can follow. And also just jump on www.drespen.com. I've got about 150 different videos and probably 200 something articles divided by 8 different topics. So you can learn from, the health aspects of weight loss and detox and anti-aging and muscle and fitness, or there's personal development specific stuff. There's money and finance and business and a lot of different categories to learn from. So people just literally put their email and first name in there. They will be delivered a sequence of emails with both articles and videos and recipes, all of that for free. Because I believe, like you believe, that if we can give people enough information to become inspired, which means in Latin, in spirit, we can help transform their lives. And then if they want to learn more about a business program or a detox program or becoming a coaching or consulting client for mindset purposes, then they simply reach out themselves. But until they're ready for that point, may we deliver as much value as we can. And remember that, for every hour that we spend in researching or delivering, we are transforming lives. And it wouldn't be the same if the listeners out there weren't there. So we are really here for them. I want to thank the listeners and thank you guys for the time that you've taken out of your day today to create that transformation. You guys rock. That's awesome.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, bud. That's that really means a lot to us, and just to echo what Craig said, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You've really been a fascinating, inspiring, and motivating person, and you truly have gone through some serious changes and transformations in your life. And I don't know if you have to go. Do you have to go right now? Is that you're cut for time?
No, that's fine. We can do another couple of minutes if you have something. I can feel something that's pressing. We need to address it.
Well, I just wanted to find out. So you speak really, really well, right? And you come across really well, and you have a lot to say. Has that always been in you, or do you kind of take it back to your belief system? And how did you get into sort of public speaking?
I have always been a hyperactive little shit. I should say. When I was young, I was always on my toes, moving around, couldn't sit still. It is an expression of my soul. I believe that that's who I am, which is why, it's difficult for me not to share. And, you've asked me to share, and so I definitely want to do that. But 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen more and talk less, is something that I try to live by, which is definitely a challenge. But I've always been, definitely been that kind of character. And for me, it's just, being able, now that I've found my mission, vision, and purpose, it's about coming back to that. And I, frustrate and go through what everyone else goes through. There's no difference. We're pretty much all going to have, challenges in life and experience the good things as well. But for me, I believe that I have some tools that can help people. And it would be a shame. You mentioned public speaking. Again, belief system. They say that public speaking is the number one fear out there. In fact, research has proven that public speaking is more scary for people than death. And I truly do believe that. Well, it's funny, but that's what the research shows, right? It's like, oh, no, don't put me on stage. I believe that you guys and the listeners out there need to reconsider that. And I had to reconsider that, because if we have something to say that we believe is going to be of service, something to say that we believe is going to help people, something to say that we know is right for us and was an expression of who we are, that might, help inspire people to change their lives, then we shouldn't have a fear of public speaking. We should have a fear of not public speaking.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and so it's about, of course, speak your truth. That's the most important part. Speak your truth, and every time, what we say is going to be beautiful for some people. Some people listen to the start of this podcast and they're still here now. Some people aren't. Everyone's different, and people have different values. But if we can connect with those people that truly are ready to transform and share our why and our belief system, that gives us an opportunity to help them transform. And as such, we transform with them. So it's not having a fear of public speaking, it's having a fear of not public speaking and dedicating ourselves to that service of others. And I've just always been a hyperactive kid, so I can't stop talking anyway, so we go hand in hand.
That's thanks good. For that. That makes a lot of sense. A nice way to look at it. Thank you.
No worries at all. Did that answer your question? I feel like I kind of, but not quite.
Yeah, no, it's, every answer is a good answer, I think. It answered it.
Yes, I've always been hyperactive, and I that's why I can find my peace in yoga so well, because in yoga I can't fidget, I can't be hyperactive, I need to be still, which is such a powerful part of my self-discipline.
Cool, my man. Well, we just want to say thanks once again, and
we're really, really awesome.
We wish you all the best. When is the next round of the Ninja Warrior?
So now I'm about to get stuck into season 2. You never know how far you're going to get. There's auditioning again and so on and so forth. But hopefully we'll be able to be part of season 2 with even more TV exposure than we had last year. So in full training, I always say begin with the end in mind. What do you need to do right now to be where you want to be in 10 years? And even more so, what do you need to do right now to be able to follow the steps of leaving your legacy? I believe that, if I can, step up in front of, millions of viewers and do well on the Australian Ninja Warrior show, and for them to hear my story, I can be of an inspiration to them. So I'm training my ass off to not only prove to myself, but to prove to others that it is possible. So hopefully we'll be able to be back on TV next July here in Australia. Season 2 is just about to start building now. So, as we build character and as we'll build our physique and our stamina, so will the TV show be building theirs. So hopefully we'll get some good exposure on season 2.
Nice.
Awesome, bud. We'll be rooting for you, my man.
Yeah, cool. Man. Thank you, gentlemen.
Cool. Well, thank you, bud.